A new study reveals obstacles for female soldiers in the special ops community and what we know about F-16s for Ukraine. All of that and more today, August 22nd, 2023. Good morning, early birds. I'm Zamon Perez, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, female soldiers in the special operations community are being sidelined by sexism. That's according to the key findings from an internal study by the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. The study was completed in 2021 and released to Military Times through a public records request. It reviewed the barriers to service for women in the ranks, from things like gear to being recognized as full members of their teams. A number of women reported they were being harmed or limited by male colleagues and leaders who acted from a desire to protect them. The study notes the issue as, quote, benevolent sexism. The study does represent an effort to understand and address the hidden factors that prevent women from being accepted by their peers in the special operations community. It also addressed other obstacles specific to female service members: healthcare, pregnancy and miscarriage support, access to childcare, and safety concerns in lodging. Here's why it matters. Female soldiers are still an extreme minority in the special operations community. Nearly all the women who participated in the research held support roles. There were only 3 female Green Berets at the time of the report's completion. A Special Operations Command spokesman said that number has grown, but there are still fewer than 10 female Green Berets. The same study showed that access to properly fitting gear and even inexpensive devices allowing for urination in field environments emerged as a major concern. Nearly half of the women in U.S. Army Special Operations Command reported they have issues with the way their issued gear fits. As a result, some resort to buying their own or borrowing a spouse's. That's despite a command policy requiring Special Operations forces to wear only body armor that has been approved by the command. The report recommended the creation of an internal newsletter addressing issues women in Army Special Operations face. That launched in 2022. Many of the other recommended solutions remain works in progress as the Army completes experiments and fit tests. Officials said the solutions for some issues come down to better education and awareness about how to adjust gear or request needed items. Another important story: the United States, Japan, and Australia are planning a joint Navy drill in the South China Sea off of the western Philippines this week. Filipino security officials said the drill underscores the 3 countries' commitment to the rule of law in the region after a recent show of Chinese aggression in the disputed waters. Philippine security officials said the drill will include 3 aircraft and helicopter carriers sailing together in a show of force and undertaking joint drills. Their commanders are set to meet with Filipino counterparts in Manila after the offshore drills. Both officials spoke on condition of anonymity because they are not allowed to publicly discuss details of the planned drills. The U.S. reportedly plans to deploy the USS America, while Japan would send one of its biggest warships, the helicopter carrier JS Izumo. The Royal Australian Navy would send its HMAS Canberra. The officials said the Philippines would not be part of this week's drills due to military logistical limitations. Here's why it matters. The United States, Japan, and Australia were among several countries that immediately expressed support for the Philippines earlier this month over Chinese military actions. On August 5th, Chinese Coast Guard ships used water cannons against Philippine vessels in the contested waterway. Following the incident, Washington renewed a warning that it is obliged to defend its longtime treaty ally if Philippine public vessels and forces come under armed attack, including in the South China Sea. In other news, Marines refueled an unmanned helicopter for the first time at an installation in California. For more on this, Marine Corps Times reporter Irene Lowenson joins the episode today. So, Irene, could you give us a rundown of what happened in this refueling, what it means for the Corps, and why it matters?
So, Marines tried out something a little different with refueling an autonomous helicopter in a recent exercise at 29 Palms, California. So the Marines had a heavy lift CH-53E Super Stallion helicopter, which is a manned traditional helicopter. And they used that to provide fuel to an unmanned Navy MQ-8C Fire Scout, which is mostly used for reconnaissance and surveillance. And the idea is that the Fire Scout, the uncrewed helicopter, doesn't have a very big maximum fuel payload. It just can't carry that much fuel, while the Super Stallion can carry a lot of fuel, around 23,000 pounds of fuel at a maximum. So the Super Stallion was able to give up 700 pounds of its fuel to this uncrewed helicopter without too much effort. And that allowed this surveillance reconnaissance helicopter to go further, go for a longer time, stay in the air, continuing on with its mission for a longer period of time because they were able to use the fuel capabilities of this bigger, more traditional helicopter. And this is all part of the Marine Corps' Force Design 2030 initiative. Regular listeners of this podcast will know that the Marine Corps is involved in an ambitious overhaul of basically every way that the Marine Corps does business. So part of that is focusing more on reconnaissance and counter-reconnaissance, meaning drones of all kinds. And also part of that is logistics. So how do you get enough fuel to the vehicles and aircraft that are doing the missions? This has been a huge thing for Marine leaders. General Berger, who recently retired as commandant, was always saying, logistics, logistics, logistics. And he said it just like that, repeated it 3 times. And this is just one example of how the Marine Corps is testing out new ways of doing that.
Thanks, Irene. If you liked our conversation today with Irene, please like and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Also on the radar for today, in case you missed it, the Netherlands and Denmark announced Sunday they will give F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. The promise of the jets came the day after a Russian missile struck a Ukrainian theater that killed 7 people and wounded almost 150 others. After months of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky requesting F-16s to bolster the Ukrainian Air Force, the U.S. recently gave approval to the Netherlands and Denmark to provide Ukraine the American-made jets. Zelensky traveled to both countries Sunday to finalize the delivery deals. Here's why it matters. Ukraine has been relying on older aircraft, but the F-16s have newer technology and targeting capabilities. Ukraine hopes the jets provide a combat edge. In an address to the Danish parliament, Zelensky said if Ukraine does not prevail, Russia will target other countries.
Ukraine will prevail. And I want you to see it, hear it, feel it. Ukraine will prevail.
The Danish Prime Minister said Denmark would provide 19 F-16 jets to Ukraine. The Netherlands did not specify the number of jets it would provide. Zelensky said on his Telegram channel that Ukraine would get 42 jets. But it's not clear yet how soon the jets will be in Ukrainian hands or in Ukrainian airspace. The Dutch and Danish governments are also involved in a coalition that is working to train Ukrainian pilots to fly the advanced fighter jets. Officials previously said the training would take 6 to 8 months. And now, here's some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. The Navy ousted the commanding officer of the guided missile destroyer Howard on Saturday. They cited a, quote, loss of confidence. The Navy did not immediately provide additional details. In case you missed it, Army officials announced Friday 2 aviation brigades will deploy abroad in the months ahead. The 82nd Airborne Division's Combat Aviation Brigade will deploy across the Middle East in the first quarter of fiscal year 2024. The 1st Infantry Division's Combat Aviation Brigade will also deploy to Europe in the first quarter of the fiscal year. Task and Purpose reported over the weekend that 2 U.S. service members were arrested in connection with the fatal stabbing of an individual in a German town. And President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden traveled to the Hawaiian island of Maui yesterday. Nearly 700 Defense Department personnel and 140 Coast Guardsmen have been part of the coordinated response to the deadly wildfires that have killed more than 100 people. And on this day in history, in 1485, the Battle of Bosworth, one of the last major battles of the English War of Roses, ended. That's it for us this morning. To get more top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. Please give us a like, rating, and comment wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on social media at @defense_news and @Military Times. The Early Bird Brief is hosted and produced by me, Zimone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by Hope Hodge-Seck, the Associated Press, and Irene Lowenson. Our editor-in-chief is Mike Gruss. Hope you all have a great day.